Hello and welcome to another video. I'm going to chat about yarn advent calendars today. There's been a lot of chatter about it online recently from both indie dyers and customers. So I'm going to talk about it from a customer's point of view, but also put the case from an indie dyer's point of view. A lot of people are angry, upset. There's always a lot of chatter this time of year when indie dyers start releasing their pre-orders for their yarn advent calendars, and a lot of people think that April is too early, and there's a lot of talk about it. So I thought I would just give you like the indie dyer's point of view. I know I'm not an indie dyer and I've never dyed an yarn advent, but I used to be an indie dyer, although that was before yarn advent calendars became a thing. But I'm also a customer. I have bought yarn advent calendars since 2021. So I'm going to talk about it from both of those points of view, and also give you a few things that you need to watch out for, and some popular yarn advent calendar scams going around. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anniken. I design knitting patterns. I teach knitting workshops online and in person, and I sell yarn through our website YarnAddict.co.uk. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. So I will talk about yarn advents first from an indie dyer or yarn business's point of view, then I'll talk about it from a customer's point of view. I've watched a couple of indie dyers talk about it lately, and I've seen loads of posts on social media, Reddit, places like that, complaining that people are already releasing pre-orders for their yarn advent calendars for Christmas 2025. Some people start releasing pre-orders for their yarn advent calendars before they ship the previous year. So I don't know if I saw any last year, but in autumn of 2023 I saw people releasing their pre-orders for the yarn advents in 2024. So they hadn't shipped 2023's yarn advent calendar yet, but they were already selling 2024's. So if you're selling your yarn advent calendar over a year in advance, then I think as a customer the only reason for you to do that is because you're using it as a business loan. Basically, you need that money. You probably have a cash flow problem, so you need to get that money in early. The reason indie dyers do advertise and sell their yarn advent calendars early, instead of saying yarn advent calendar, I'm just going to call them yarn advents. I also saw somebody complaining about the fact that they're called yarn advents rather than yarn advent calendars, but yarn advents is just easier to say, so that's what I'm going to say from that one. But the reason indie dyers do sell them early is because they take an awful lot of time, and they're also a big investment in time and money. So they have to order the yarn, order any extras that they're putting in with it, order all their packaging equipment. The yarn arrives, they have to probably go through them and like loosen them a bit, so they would take them out and like flip them between their hands. They may have to put extra ties on them, things like that, and then loop them back together. To soak them, they all have to be soaked for a certain amount of time because they have to be soaked through before you can dye them. Then they have to dye them, dry them. Some indie dyers may reskein them. Those who don't will have to twist them so they come back in a hank like this, and then they have to sort them all, package them all. They're usually packaged individually. Some have like a box with individual doors you can open, and some wrap them and put them in a box. And they have to include any extras they offer. Some offer a choice of 10 or 20 gram mini skeins. Some do a 24-day or 25-day. Some do a 12-day. So one of the ones I got last year was a 12-day advent. But some do 24 days. Some include an extra skein on day 25, which may be another mini skein. Some include a full skein. Some include options. Some include one base yarn. Some include a choice of different base yarns. So it is a lot of work to dye all that and skein it all, twist it all, package it all, ship it all. And obviously those who have international customers need to make sure they ship them off early enough so that if they get stuck in customs, they will still get to you in plenty of time for December. I had one a couple of years ago which only arrived a few days before December. And if it doesn't get to you by the 1st of December, then you're going to be very, very disappointed. That was from a British dyer, so they were shipping it within the UK, so it wasn't being held up in customs or anything like that. I think last year there was a big problem in Canada with Canada Post, whatever it's called, being on strike for quite a long time. I can't remember when that was, so I don't know whether that affected YarnAddict. This year we obviously have the fun of a certain president threatening tariffs. I'm filming this on the 10th of April, and he put tariffs on most countries in the world, and then I think last night he paused them for 3 months or something. So obviously that's an uncertainty as well. So if you live in the US and you order add-ons from abroad, you are probably going to face bigger charges when they arrive, but they're not going to be shipped till the autumn, so who knows what's going to happen then. Things are very uncertain, and that's also going to play into indie dyers' decisions, especially European indie dyers who may have a lot of customers in the US. They may be feeling worried about accepting orders from the US because they don't know what's going to happen about these tariffs, and the tariffs are paid for by the customer. The indie dyers aren't going to pay those tariffs for you. They're paid by you as a customer. So when I order from abroad, when it arrives in the UK, we have VAT, and that's usually applied on orders over a certain amount. That threshold is quite low. So if I order yarn from abroad, I will have VAT charged, and then depending on the carrier, they also charge a admin fee on top of that. So Royal Mail admin fee used to be £8. So it may just be like £1 or £2 for the VAT charge, then they would charge £8 on top of that. So that's also going to cause a lot of uncertainty this year, and also what that's doing to the economy is also a big question mark at the moment. So I understand indie dyers wanting to get pre-orders in early. I was listening to one indie dyer talk about this morning, and she said that, I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but one year there was a shortage of mini skeins. So most indie dyers in the UK get their undyed yarn from one or two main suppliers. So if that business is short, or they have problems getting their supplies in because they usually get shipped from somewhere abroad, then you may not be able to order the mini skeins you need. So you need to order them early enough so you know you're going to get them. So if I was an indie dyer and I decided to advertise and sell my yarn add-ons now, I would hope to get in enough money to cover what I have to pay out to order those mini skeins. I would then place an order for those mini skeins, so I know I have the number of mini skeins I need to dye to do the number of yarn add-ons that I've committed to. A lot of indie dyers will also offer payment plans, so you can pay it off in installments, either monthly or every other month and stuff like that. So obviously they need to make sure that they allow enough time so people can pay in installments, and they will still get the money in and have time to chase people for money before they have to ship them. Most indie dyers will also dye a few spares. If stuff gets lost in shipping, they have a few spares they can send out. That means that come end of November, by the time everything has arrived, most indie dyers will have a few spares. So if you don't want to order now, you can usually wait till November, and if you stalk your favorite indie dyers online, quite often their Instagram stories and things, you might be able to snap up one. The very first advent calendar I bought was actually one I bought a few days before December 1st. I'd ummed and ahed about it for a couple of years and not ordered anything, and then indie dyer I followed on Instagram posted in her stories at the end of this November 2021, I think it must have been, saying, I have a few spares. If you want them, I can ship them today. So I messaged back and said, yes, please, can I have one? So she shipped them that day, and that was my first yarn advent. Since then, I've ordered them in the spring. So I understand why indie dyers want you to order them as early as possible, so they know how much work they have to do. They can space their work out over the summer, because even though I think for those who do yarn advents, it's a big chunk of their income, but they still have to have regular shop updates. They still do yarn festivals and things like that. Some do monthly clubs. So they still have to fit their normal dyeing in around the yarn advent dyeing. And some of them have families, some of them have children, so they will have children home for the summer holidays. So they have to fit all this in. I know that an Indian dyer's personal circumstances isn't our problem as the customer, but obviously when you run a small business, and even though there are male indie dyers, most indie dyers are women. A lot of them do have families. A lot of them do it as a job that they can fit around their family commitments, because it is a job that's fairly, the entry to starting into dyeing, you don't need a lot of equipment to start dyeing. I used to do it. I did it in here on I've got quite a big desk that's nearly the width of this room. It's about that much shorter than the width of this room. I used to dye it on there. I used to soak it in the bathroom, which is next door to here. Bring it in here, dye it. I had some different shelving back then. I had 2 microwaves. I dyed and I'd heat it in a microwave. Then I would take it into the bathroom and rinse it, and then I'd dry it anywhere in the house or in the garden where I could find space, depending on the weather. So starting into dyeing is, you don't need a lot of money or equipment to get started. And it's even easier now to find out how to do it and how to find supplies. That was a bit more difficult when I started because there was less stuff on the internet. Today it's a lot easier, I think. Then most indie dyers will eventually have their own studio set up, or a room in their house, or a shed in the garden, or garage, or whatever, and have a bit more of a professional setup. I never got to that stage because I had to stop dyeing because it was killing my back. Really bad. I had back and neck problems, and it just got to the point where it was too much. I couldn't do enough of it to actually make any money from it. So I stopped doing it because I was really struggling with the physical work, because it's very hard physical work. So I understand why indie dyers need to know how many advents they need to dye early. A lot of customers will say, well, why can't you dye them and then sell them? Well, if you are selling, say, 100 advents, that's 100 times 24, 25 gram mini skeins. That's 124 mini skeins plus extras. That costs a lot of money up front. You're talking thousands up front that you have to find as a small business, and most small businesses don't have that kind of cash lying around. So I can see why they want to sell a certain amount. If I was an indie dyer still and I was doing yarn advents, I would want to sell enough up front I could cover the cost to order the yarn, because I'd be very reluctant to order that amount of yarn before I had sold it, because I'd be worried about not selling enough and then taking a loss. Because that loss could be enough to kill off a lot of small businesses these days. So if I was an indie dyer, I would want to know how many I'm going to need and get enough money in advance so I could order that yarn without risking the rest of my business. That would be my idea. Then also, most indie dyers are quieter in the summer because people buy less yarn in the summer. Most yarn-related businesses are quiet in the summer. Some people don't knit as much in the summer because they're doing other things. People just knit a lot less during the summer and buy less yarn in the summer. Autumn and winter are kind of high season for yarn buying and knitting. So most indie dyers are quieter over the summer, so they will then try and fit in the dyeing over the summer in between their normal dyeing schedule, and then they will have to dry it all, skein it all, twist it all, package it all, and that takes an awful lot of time. So I understand why indie dyers want to sell them in April, May, dye them over June, July, August, do all the rest in September, October, ship them by the end of October to make sure they arrive. So I understand it from an indie dyer's point of view. So let's talk about it from a customer's point of view. If you pay for your advent up front, you may not be covered by your card company or PayPal if that indie dyer goes out of business or doesn't ship the advent in time. So if I ordered it now and that yarn didn't arrive by 1st of December, from what I understand, and I haven't actually looked this up, I rely on other people who've told me this, PayPal has a 6-month claim window. So if I order it on the 1st of April and it doesn't ship by 1st of December, it's too late for me to put in a claim through PayPal to get my money back. some card companies have a 6-month claim window, some have longer, so you need to just check your individual card company. So when I have bought advent calendars, apart from the very first one, which I ordered like last minute, normally I will opt to pay by installments. It means I can spread the costs because they are expensive, so it doesn't feel like I'm paying as much. But also it means that if the yarn doesn't turn out, I can claim at least some of that money back. So if I haven't bought any advents yet this year, because I don't know, I will get at least one, but I don't know which one yet. But I'm trying to buy a different dyer every year. I'm trying not to buy this. So far, I haven't bought from the same dyer twice. Not because I don't like them, but just because I fancy trying something different every year. Last Christmas, I had a spinning advent. I haven't spun hardly any of that yet. So I did fancy doing another fibre one this year, but I haven't spun at all so far this year. So I probably won't do that because I don't want to build up a big stash of fibre and not have time to spin it. So, and I got 2 yarn advents. One of them I've knitted part of it, but I only used like less than 5 grams of each 20-gram mini skein. So the rest is sitting here, and I do know what I'm going to do with it. I just haven't had time to start doing it yet. So then I have another one which was a 12-day advent, and then when I saw the rest of the advent I really liked it, so I ordered that as well, which I'm going to talk about when I start working on it. I haven't decided what to do with that yet, but I have some ideas. So my goal is to try and work on those 2 over the summer, and then I have an advent from 2023 that I haven't opened yet. And I'm feeling slightly guilty about that. So I need to, my goal is to try and work on those 3 over the summer this year, and then get 1 or 2 this Christmas. But I don't know which ones yet. So from a customer's point of view, I would recommend that you pay in installments, even if you can afford to pay it all up front and you fancy paying it all up front. Do be aware of the fact that if it is more than 6 months till 1st of December and that yarn doesn't ship and get to you by the 1st of December, you may not get your money back. So be aware of that. So that's why I think if you're going to order now, pay in installments, and that way you may lose 1 or 2 of your installments, but you will at least get part of the money back. The other problem as a customer is that most indie dyers will show like an inspiration photo and give you like a theme, and you might think, oh yeah, I like that. The colours in the inspiration photos look great. That sounds like a great theme, whatever the theme is, and you might order it and it arrives and you think, oh, that's not what I expected. That happened to me a couple of years ago. It was fine, but it wasn't what I was expecting. Now, obviously, sharing a photo and like a theme, people can interpret that theme in different ways, and I didn't want to complain about it to the indie dyer because I thought, well, she may have interpreted the way she intended to interpret it, and I just interpreted it differently. It is a surprise, so you may not like what you're going to get. So if you don't like surprises, or you're very particular about colours and things, make sure you know whether it's going to be a variegated colorway, self-striping, solid, semi-solid, and make sure you know that in advance so you can be prepared for what you get, because you may not like what you're going to get, and that's obviously disappointing. But you know, it's not really the indie dyer's fault unless what they send out is completely different. So there was an indie dyer, this was shared on a Reddit forum earlier this year. I don't remember who the indie dyer is. It's not an indie dyer I've ever bought from, I don't think. And I don't remember which indie dyer it is. But they had commissioned a designer to design a design for their advent calendar. And the photograph of that designer's item, I think it was a shawl, but I can't remember, looked completely different than the colours that was actually sent out to customers. So a lot of people were complaining. So then that designer also got drawn into it. I mean, she was sent an advent, designed and knitted the sample, and then what was sent out to customers in December or last autumn was nothing like what she was sent. Colours were quite different. And a lot of people were very upset because even if they knitted that design that came with the yarn advent, it wasn't going to look like that because the colours were different. And a lot of people were very disappointed, and there was a lot of complaints. So you've got to make sure that you choose an indie dyer that you're familiar with, that you like their work, and that you know that they can actually produce the yarn advent and ship it in time, and that they are going to produce what looks like the inspiration photos. Like I said, we can interpret that differently, so you may be disappointed, but you want to have a rough idea of what you're going to get. So if they're promising pastels, you don't want to suddenly open it and find it's neons, because you may not like neons. Or if you're expecting neons, you may not then suddenly receive pastels. You would be disappointed. So there are things like that I need to think about, because it is easy to get disappointed. And some of that disappointment might be on us as customers, that we've interpreted and we have different expectations, which may not be the indie dyer's fault. And some of it may be that indie dyer can't dye what they promised, or that it's all thrown together at the last minute. I've certainly had that feeling with one of mine before, that it was all done a bit last minute, and maybe they didn't put as much effort into it as I had thought they would. Also, be clear about whether your advent is going to include extras or not. Some people include extras, some don't. So make sure you know what extras will be included, or if there will be extras included. One of the ones I ordered last year included a project bag from OWAV Amsterdam, which I only just bought one of their project bags when I was in Norway last autumn. And then I got one the YarnAddict, and I was really excited because I wanted one of their project bags forever. And I suddenly had two, so I was really thrilled. But I don't remember the reading in their description that it was going to include that project bag. Might be because I didn't read it properly, I don't know. Now when I order something, I tend to take a screenshot of what the order page says. So I take a screenshot of the image, the kind of inspiration image, and then I take a screenshot of the description, just so I remember what I'm supposed to be getting, because I'll forget that by December. So just to sum up, from an indie dyer's point of view, I understand why they advertise their advents early. I want to sell as many as possible early, because it is a big financial risk for them to take. It's massive amounts of work, and they have to space it out over several months. So I totally understand that. From a consumer's point of view, just make sure that you protect yourself, so that if they go out of business or they don't ship them in time, you are protected and you don't lose all your money, but you may lose some. Also, there are always advents left at the end of November once everything's been shipped out, because most indie dyers will dye extra, so there's always some left over. So if you haven't bought anything, you might be able to snap one up last minute. There are some indie dyers also who don't advertise their yarn advents till late summer, early autumn. But obviously there's a lot less choice. Most of them are advertising it now. Plus, what I've noticed in recent years is that a lot of indie dyers in January are advertising last year's advent. So January this year, if you didn't get their advent from 2024, you could order it in January, but it might not ship till February, March, because again, they have to dye all these mini skeins. So one of the ones I got, that was a 12-day advent. I really liked the rest of the advent, and I regretted not getting the full one, so I ordered the rest in January. And that arrived in, I think it arrived while I was in Norway last time, so end of February, early March, I think. Yeah, end of February, I think it arrived. So, and I ordered that in January. So obviously you're still going to have to wait a while for it, because they still have to dye and do all the work for it. So if you decide not to get an advent calendar, and you're having major FOMO by the end of December, check with your favorite indie dyer and see if they are taking orders for last year's advents in January, and you might be able to snap one up then. Obviously, you don't then have the fun of opening it every day. The other thing that I've seen is a lot of people complaining about people who buy multiple yarn advents. One complaint I saw was about a particular YouTuber who had a huge number of yarn advents to open. Now, she's a big YouTuber. She has a big following. So I reckon that nearly all, if not all, of those yarn advents were gifted. So she was opening, I don't know how many a day, but quite a few a day. It was a case of, right, opening advent A, opening advent B. She couldn't really do anything with them because there was too many. But some people will buy 3 or 4 advents, and some people think that's disgusting and overconsumption and are horrified. If you can afford it and you enjoy it and it gives you joy, why not? It's your money. You can spend it on what you want. But be aware of the fact that you may feel pressured into buying several yarn advents that you may or may not want, and that you don't fall victim to major case of FOMO if you don't buy all the ones you want. And don't feel like you have to support all the indie dyers you like. You're not obliged to support their business if you can't afford to or you don't want to. So if you decide that 2 is maximum, don't want any more than that because I can't knit it, I can't afford it, but you feel like you have, say, 5 or 6 indie dyers that you become friends with and that you want to support, you're not obliged to buy their stuff. So decide in advance before you start seeing the YarnAddict go on sale how many you're going to get, and try and stick to that so you don't overdo it. Unless you can afford to buy 10 and you want to buy 10 and you enjoy buying 10, then obviously go for it. But don't fall to that pressure of buying just for the sake of buying. So one more thing before we finish, be aware of scams. So one indie dyer that I follow, who actually I got my first advent from 2021, Vicky Brand Designs. She also owns a yarn shop in Cheltenham, I think it is, called String, I think it is. She shared last year that a seller on Amazon was using her photos to advertise a very cheap yarn advent calendar. And she has a box printed up that she says she designed with individual doors. And they used that box, and they also used photos of her hand-dyed yarn to advertise the yarn advent. And obviously she wasn't involved, so you're not going to get that. And it was very, very cheap, and I think she did order it just to see what would actually show up, and it was awful. It was not at all what was advertised. And I'm pretty sure she also complained to Amazon, but that you're not going to get anywhere with Amazon, I don't think, and places like Temu and stuff. So just be aware of buying these very cheap yarn advent calendars from big companies like Temu and Amazon. There's probably others. Just be careful, because they may be ripping off individual businesses, small businesses, indie dyers, designers, that kind of thing. And that goes for more than just yarn advents. That goes for a lot of other stuff as well. So be a bit careful. Don't think, well, I can get this one on Amazon for 20 quid and it looks like it's hand-dyed sock yarn. It's probably not going to be. So just be aware of that as well. It's better to spend more money and buy from a business that you know and trust. So let me know if you've ever got a yarn advent. Have you been happy, disappointed, any particular problems? Share your views and recommendations in the comments below. If you have a yarn advent or an indie dye you particularly like, have you bought one this year? Are you waiting? Are you not going to get one? Do you get several every year? Share everything in the comments. I'd love to hear your views. I do have a couple other videos I recorded in previous years about yarn advents. I will link those at the end and below this video as well. Thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. And if you haven't subscribed yet, please consider subscribing. And I will see you next time. Thanks for watching.